Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Host Eddie Frederick.
Welcome to Caribbean Perspective. So glad you can join us. The story that takes the lead in today's edition for Wednesday, 20th November 2024, and brought to you in association with our friends at Antillean Group. Pilot calls for a unified approach to address regional aviation issues. Details after this important message.
Believe in our strength, we'll stand by you. Protection from all, perils big and small. Reassurance we give, it's so clear to see. Peace of mind, that's our service guarantee. We look after all our family. Yes, we do at every opportunity.
Antillean Group, underwriters of all classes of insurance solutions for your protection and investment. Live well financially.
Welcome back. A local pilot has called for an urgent meeting of stakeholders to address a myriad of issues impacting the aviation sector in the region. Regional carriers face a volatile jumble of issues, from a small customer base to high taxation and political issues. Unless those issues are addressed definitively, Sylvanus Ernest says regional aviation will continue to flounder. Manasseh Stanislaus of DBS News World reports.
Issues affecting the aviation sector are neither new nor few, but one local pilot thinks if stakeholders can get together, many of these issues could be laid to rest. While there has been an increase in airlines operating in the region, Sylvanus Ernest says consistency remains a major challenge.
There are quite a bit of flights coming in, and the thing is how long that'll actually last, you know. We have a serious problem in the region when it comes to aviation, and it's not been addressed, you know. It's like, you know, the government's just, I don't think they're really looking into airlines coming in and lasting in the region.
He highlighted the factors which contribute to carriers not having longevity in the region. Mr. Ernest also wants to see greater use being made of certified personnel in the aviation sector.
The size of the aeroplanes that are being used for those short flights, it is impossible. It is impossible for all those airlines to remain in there and to survive with the size of the airplanes that they have. With all the issues that we have in aviation, you don't get like the government, the aviation minister would call your aviators, you know, have a meeting with your aviators and hear what they have to say, feel them.
The important role which aviation plays in the tourism industry was touched on by Mr. Ernest.
We're dealing with a tourist industry, right? And the tourist industry needs the airline. That goes together. You cannot be dealing with tourism and airlift is a problem. And I can tell you, while we have so many airlines now, we had to think of another couple months what would happen, because I can tell you some of those airlines are coming in here, 5 people on a 30-seater, 4 people, you know, and that could only last for a little time.
The senior aviation personnel provided possible solutions to boost intra-regional travel and to sustain flights around the region.
How many flights you have a week coming in? How many seats you had and how many people actually come in and out? That would give you an idea of what would happen if it continued, you know. And we don't have a lot of people traveling like before because it's expensive. Plus the taxes, you know, I mean, if the governments are that interested in seeing people fly more and stuff, so they have to take a good look at the taxes, because, you know, the taxes are way too high.
Mr. Ernest hopes a meeting can be held soon among the relevant stakeholders to ensure that flight sustainability can be achieved within the region. He is also suggesting that aviation companies consider reverting to using smaller aircraft such as 30-seaters instead of 40 to 50-seater planes for intra-regional flights. For the DBS News World, Manasseh Stanislas reporting.
Most politicians are continuing to remain mum on whether they are in support of salary increases for themselves and senior state officials in Trinidad and Tobago. While an opposition MP finds it unjust to propose increases at this time, one government minister says his view will be clear during the parliament debate. This CNC3 News report has more.
I wouldn't comment on that. That has been placed in the parliament and is up for debate. I have nothing to say on that.
The Works and Transport Minister's response when asked his thoughts about the revised SRC report suggesting increases for public office holders. We posed the same question to Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley, except the PNM political leader did not provide a single comment on the proposed salary increase, which could see him earn $87,000 a month and more than $1 million in back pay. The Movement for Social Justice is now weighing in on the proposed wage hike for Dr. Rowley, the President, Opposition Leader, Chief Justice, Police Commissioner, and others. Abdullah called on the trade union movement, which already described the SRC report as a slap in the face, to unite and register their collective disgust by protesting the obscene salary increases proposed by the SRC, especially after tens of thousands of public sector workers were offered 4% during wage negotiations. He describes it as government hypocrisy.
There should have never been a consideration of the debate. It should have been slapped down one time by the government and said, we're not prepared. We cannot, in conscience, in moral conscience, accept any kind of increase. And that goes for the Chief Justice and President and everybody else.
Meanwhile, UNC Chairman Dave Tanko refused to say if the opposition supports MPs and others receiving wage hikes. Instead, he suggests the government is using the report as a distraction from the Forex crisis. And Naparima MP Rodney Charles, branded one of 5 UNC dissidents, believes it's poor timing to agree to significant pay increases for these office holders, given TNT's economic circumstances, while public sector workers accept 4%. He also questions the criteria used. The opposition leader was contacted for comment, but she did not provide an official response. If the report is adopted, she is expected to get a 76% salary increase to roughly $52,000 and $900,000 in back pay.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick,
In association with our friends at
Antillean Group, underwriters of all classes of insurance solutions for your protection and investment. Live well financially.
Is now upon us, so we as Caribbean people need to remember to think safety and be prepared. Avoid venturing outside during a storm or hurricane, especially if there are strong winds. Rooftops and other debris are often blown about and can cause great damage.
Lawmaker loses legal battle against Bank of Nova Scotia in fee case in Jamaica. Details in this TVJ News item.
A press conference at the Spanish Court Hotel in St. Andrew on Friday, hours after opposition Member of Parliament Fitz Jackson lost his bid for the Supreme Court to issue a summary judgment that the Bank of Nova Scotia, BNS, breached the Bills of Exchange Act by charging fees to encash checks.
I was expecting a better judgment, obviously, but I'm also mindful of the implication of a judgment one way or the other.
The summary judgment was applied for after Mr. Jackson filed a suit against BNS for breaching his rights. This after he was charged a $385 fee for encashing a $2,500 check in 2019. Mr. Jackson's attorney Anthony Williams explained why the summary judgment was applied for.
Having meticulously examined the court documents and the defense filed by BNS, there were certain concessions made that led us to the conclusion that it would have been BNS who would not have had a real prospect of success.
However, Supreme Court Judge Justice Crescentia Brown Beckford found that the Bank of Nova Scotia did not breach the Bills of Exchange Act nor the Banking Services Act. The judge also found that the bank's right to charge a fee for the service falls under the Code of Conduct under the Banking Services Act.
We could see some glaring inconsistencies, contradictions in the analysis by the judge. And most importantly, as I mentioned earlier on, this lawsuit was based from the very beginning on the provisions of the Bills of Exchange Act, not the Banking Services Act.
It must be noted that since the case was brought before the bank, BNS has since discontinued charging fees for checks. Now, as for what's next,
we intend to file an appeal against the matter. It is not over yet. We have a real prospect of fighting this matter, and we believe that we would be on good grounds.
For me personally, any effort that can protect the everyday Jamaican is a battle worth fighting. And I intend to do that inside or outside of Parliament.
Mr. Jackson has been lobbying Parliament since 2018 to enact legislation which would eliminate certain banking fees, including fees for the encashment of checks. The bill tabled at the time is still before Parliament.
In an exclusive interview during the Fenty Beauty launch, Robin Rihanna Fenty shared her excitement about bringing the brand to Barbados. She emphasized that launching the Fenty Beauty on her home island felt natural and was something she always envisioned. Rihanna expressed how moved she was by the unexpected level of support from Bajans and conveyed the immense pride she felt in seeing her brand make its debut in the place that shaped her.
You know, it feels like I always felt like this should have happened, right? I always knew it was going to happen, but obviously you go through challenges in different territories and regions, so there's a lot of things that you have to go through. We finally got it here, and I knew that I would feel really proud, but I didn't expect for Bajans to even feel the way that they did, like the pride. Even countries like Jamaica, who we didn't get to yet, we are coming to Jamaica. But even like to see how much they cared and were invested in being a part of the brand, that to me meant so much, and it was more than I could have ever expected. But I didn't even know if I was going to get to come, and to be able to be here, I think is the most important thing to set the tone for Barbados and the Caribbean and the entire region. I'm going to keep coming back. We're going to keep having events in the Caribbean. We're going to come back to Barbados over and over. We're going to expand. We're going to go to other islands. We're in 9 islands right now. And that was more than we even initially expected. So I can't even tell you. How does it feel to come home? You like, take your shoes off, take the bra off.
Barbados' Prime Minister Mia Mottley was in a conversational mood earlier on Monday when she was speaking during the 16th Ministerial Forum for Development in Latin America and the Caribbean, which was taking place at Wyndham Grand Barbados Sam Lord's Castle Resort in St. Philip. She was discussing how the threat of crises such as climate change and a pandemic affect nations such as Barbados and the ability of those governing to adequately deal with matters such as national poverty.
We've been fighting this battle for the better part of 6 decades, and we've done reasonably well. Let us be very clear. We have lifted large numbers of our population out of poverty. But the fact that we still have an underbelly of poverty is what must drive us even further and harder than at any other time. Because we have this underbelly of poverty at a time when the global environment is threatening to reduce back into poverty many countries that thought that they had turned the corner. And you would notice that I am in conversation mode, not speech mode. And I'm in conversation mode because it is important that we reflect on the fact that at the same time that we want to solve this problem of this underbelly of poverty, we are confronted with crises that can topple the state at any time. Whether that crisis is climate and the corresponding consequences arising from lack of appropriate measures to protect our biodiversity, as our colleagues in Colombia are meeting as we speak here, whether that threat comes from the pandemic, which if I had spoken about that a decade ago, you would have let it run off your back like water off of a duck's back. But the experience of almost 3 years of restricted movement and all that it brought with it, and the consequential post-traumatic stress disorder that is still lingering among members of our populations across the world, causes us to know that pandemics now are not to be ignored, and rather than being ignored, that they have the capacity to destabilize nations and to send people back into poverty, not to mention the lives that it will take.
I am Eddie Frederick. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean.
In the meantime, please follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel for daily regional news and more, in association with our friends at Antillian Group.
Believe in our strength, we'll stand by you. Protection from all perils, big and small. Reassurance we give, it's so clear to see. Peace of mind, that's our service guarantee. We look after all our family. Yes, we do at every opportunity.
Antillian Group, underwriters of all classes of insurance solutions for your protection and investment. Live well financially.